Hi, everyone. Welcome to our Facebook Live broadcast. I'm Steve Altishan, Director of Client Partnerships at Pacific Legal, and I'm here today with educator and author Portia Clare to talk about how books can help support children dealing with the emotional impact of their parents going through a divorce. So, Portia, how are you doing today?
I'm doing very well, Steve. It's wonderful to be with you today.
Well, I'm so happy. I have been excited about this Facebook Live for a long time. So before we start in, though, can you tell us just a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Well, as you shared, my name is Portia Clare, and I am a teacher. I've been teaching for 31 years. I'm beginning my 32nd year in a couple of weeks. I am also a children's book author, a new children's book author. I am excited about being here because I have an opportunity to share something that will help children. And that for me is everything. I teach, simply put, because I love children. And having an opportunity to share things that will help children and their families is everything. I am an only child. I am the daughter of the late Randolph George Clare Jr. and Jane Easterling Clare. I was raised in the Bahamas. I have dual citizenship. I am American and Bahamian. And I just love children.
I love it. I love it. Well, then this is perfect.
Yes, sir.
So let's kind of start about, as a family law firm, we understand that divorce is an emotional time. I mean, for everybody, obviously.
Mhm.
So let's just talk a little bit about emotions and how what their impact can be, and maybe especially on kids.
Yes, well, a divorce is something that is not easy for children. Children crave families. Children love their parents, and they think the world of their parents, and they want to have that relationship with both mommy and daddy. They enjoy the safety of having both parents in their homes or having to spend time, even if their parents are separated because of work. They enjoy spending time with family in general. But when there is a divorce, it can be very confusing for children. Over the years, I've taught children who have gone through their parents having a divorce, and expressing how they feel about that has been challenging for them. Oftentimes, we will see some silence, some withdrawing from activity. Sometimes we'll see some anger or frustration that comes from something that doesn't seem appropriate at the time because they're challenged with sharing exactly how they feel. Now, of course, I'm speaking of children who are between the ages of 5 and 9, because that's where my life's work has been. I've actually taught some 10-year-olds as well. So smaller children are a bit challenged with expressing exactly how they're feeling. And you might see something that's termed acting out, or you may see behavior that's completely unusual for a child. And I think they're doing the best that they can to express their confusion, their sadness, their anger about their parents separating. They don't want to have to be different in any way. And they don't want mommies and daddies to be in a different space. They want things to stay the same. They want the routine that they know because they feel comfortable with that. So it's unsettling for them. But the good news is that we do have ways to help them through that process. And hopefully they will be okay as we continue to share those things with them.
Oh, that's wonderful. The kind of support that comes from schools, maybe in communities, I imagine that's really important for kids.
Absolutely. Our families are, I guess, the best community for our children and also our schools. Oftentimes, our children, if we really think about it, there's a lot of time that's spent in the schoolhouse. So,
Yeah.
having the support of your school, the teachers, the administrators, and the other people who work in the building, even, is essential, I think, for children who are challenged with parents who are divorcing or some other unforeseen, potentially traumatic event in their lives. Having adults who can tell the child, we're here for you. You're going to be okay. It's not your fault. You didn't do anything wrong, and you're going to have help. We're going to be here for you. And if you want to talk to us, we're here. If you want to share something with us, we're here. There have been people in the community who might do things with children, and may be able to speak with them in a way that a parent cannot, to help them. Of course, those teachers and those in the building should speak with parents regarding that child, because a parent needs to know that a child is comfortable with another person, or that the child is expressing concern, so that we can communicate with the parent and become a bigger community and help that child to work through this process. So community is everything, even a church community, extended family, grandparents, aunts, uncles, older cousins, can be helpful when a child is experiencing divorce. Absolutely.
Oh my gosh. That's interesting. I don't know if I'd call it a new phenomenon, but because I'm old, but I remember going to grade school and going through 6 years of grade school, and one time having an acknowledgement about a kid whose parents were getting divorced. I mean, it was just nothing
That's
talked
right.
about.
And it's becoming the rule rather than the exception now.
Oh
And
my
that has
gosh.
been my experience over the years. There's been more and more of children coming to school with parents who have been divorced, or who are getting divorced.
Yeah.
It does not change how a child is affected by it. I think there's sadness each time, because they're having a challenge with understanding what's happening. And the first thought in their minds is, I've done something wrong. Maybe it's because of me. And we have to get them to recognize that, no, sweetheart, it's not you. And all is going to be well. You didn't do anything wrong. And you're still loved by both mommy and daddy.
That's so cool. So we're here to talk about books.
Yes.
And I know we're going to talk about some books you recommend, but before we get into specific books, just can you talk a little bit about, how children's books in general can help support kids whose parents are going through divorce or separating, or, suddenly living in two households?
Absolutely. Well, the beauty of a book is that it actually is a safe place for children, because as they're reading a story, they can become a part of that story. And if they're not comfortable with talking with anyone yet about the subject at hand, the book allows them to express themselves through thought and maybe even out loud. As they're reading it, they can relate, make connections, and they can hear, in many instances when they're reading, that things are okay, or they're making connections. Oh, that's what I'm going through right now, or that's what my friend said, or that's what my friend is experiencing. So a book allows children to have a safe place to express feelings and emotions. And I love that authors are writing on topics that are very much relevant and real life. So that that children can read independently. The other good thing about books is that they can be shared with children by their parents or any other significant person in their community. And that bonding time of reading that book can also open up a safe place for children to be able to express their feelings, because they're listening to the story, and perhaps as they're reading, there are questions that they might have, and they may feel comfortable with asking those questions with that adult. So it's an excellent opportunity to communicate, and to give children a safe place to share exactly what they're going through. And they can return to it over and over again. The second time they read it, they may hear something different. And isn't that just the way with adults? As we read something initially, we gain something from that reading. When we read it a second time, we gain some additional information. So they're treasures for children.
I think that's wonderful. And there are so many different kinds of things going on with kids.
Indeed.
Some may be it's the two households getting used to. Some, like you said, maybe it's my fault, whether my parents still love me. All these different kinds that probably all have books that relate to those kinds of issues. So, kind
Yeah.
of go around that. Let's kind of start with some books that you would
Okay.
recommend.
Absolutely. It would be my pleasure. Well, I want to start with a book called My Body Sends a Signal. And it says helping kids recognize emotions and express feelings. Because this book actually, while it doesn't speak directly to divorce, it talks about emotions and it talks about feelings that children experience. And as you read this story, children will find ways that they can relate to the character in the story. And not only that, this author has placed in the back of this book some games. They're actually pages that can be cut out, and you have some cards that allow children to express their feelings. They can tell stories using the cards that are here and showing the emotions that are on those cards. They can have conversations with their parents and point and share, this is how I'm feeling right now, and maybe explain why. And there's also a guide about how to read this book with your children. So I wanted to start with this because it talks about what we began our conversation sharing. It talks about the different emotions that children experience. And this is beyond children who are just in their primary grade years. This divorce affects children who are in high school. It affects young adults as well. So that I thought was an excellent place to start. And I really highly recommend this book to you. My Body Sends a Signal by Natalie McGuire.
I love that. I love that. And just before we get into another book, I want to make sure that the people listening know that either at the end of this, we will give information, you can give information to contact you or to contact us regarding where to find these books and a list of these books. I mean, these are meant to be shared.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think they will be very helpful to children and their families.
So what's another book you'd recommend?
Another one that I would recommend is called My Family's Changing. It's a first look at family breakup. And I have a little blurb here that I want to share as quickly as possible. It says, this picture book aimed at young children is ideal for parents and children to read together, and a great starting point for discussions about what divorce can mean for a family and ways to adapt to a new way of living. And it talks about divorce very frankly and simply, and it is a guide to reassure children that their experiences are shared by others. They're not alone. They're not the only one whose parents are getting divorced. And I think sometimes children struggle with that. It's just me, and they don't know how to handle that. And this book will help a parent through that process.
And that's
this is by
really
Pat
like
Thomas.
that. Yeah. I love that for two reasons. One, that it shows other people, the other kids, but also the kind of the guide thing. One of the big things that happens in divorce is the uncertainty.
Yes,
is scary, and so even just knowing what may be coming can be helpful, I guess.
That's right. That's right. And it's something that a parent can read. I guess if you're moving to that state or if you're in that state as well, and you can go back to it. And hopefully, because initially your child may not want to even have this conversation. I don't want this. But if it's there, and they can access it, and it's something that's on their reading level, perhaps they will pick it up, and perhaps you can try and share it again and then have conversations with it. Some things will take time.
Right.
And we have to work with children and respect how they are feeling. We have to have real conversations with them, but we have to recognize that they have a time frame and they need to be able to feel their feelings and have a say, if you will, in when we're going to move forward with this conversation. I think that shows a bit of respect for them as well. And I think that's important for children.
Oh yeah. and again, the kind of everyone gets divorced. I mean, it's not just you getting divorced. And that just leads me, because you sent me a list of the books. And the one that kind of struck me, it just what you're kind of saying, well, apparently even dinosaurs get divorced.
And that's the one that I want to share next. Absolutely. It's called Dinosaurs Divorce, A Guide for Changing Families. And the author is, well, this is a husband and wife team, Lori and Mark Brown. Can you see that?
You bet.
Okay, and it says, with cute dinosaur characters that child readers will find fun and engaging, this book is a fantastic roadmap for the early days of divorce. It teaches a child how to talk to friends about their parents' divorce, the practicalities of living in two different homes, and how to adapt to a blended family. So divorce is more than just a child being separated from mom and dad, but actually parents may choose to marry or remarry, and they may remarry someone who already has children. So that is a topic of discussion as well that children need to have. You might not just be visiting daddy or mommy by themselves. Daddy and mommy might remarry, and they may remarry someone who has children also. All of those things need to be discussed with children.
Well, and yeah, living in two homes. I mean, especially when the homes are maybe not just you and your parent.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I
That's
like
an
that
adjustment
idea.
in itself.
Yeah. Jeff, are there any books you recommend about kids living in two homes?
Absolutely. There's one that's called that very name, Two Homes, by Clare Mazarel. This particular book I loved because it walked you through a child's perspective of living in two places. It's a simple story about a little boy named Alex. His parents are recently divorced, and he lives in homes that are different. But what it really wants children to understand is that he is loved by both of his parents. He has a place in both of those homes that are just his own. It's a very sensitive and thoughtful book, and it talks about concerns that a child might have with having two different places to live. It shares what's similar, what's different. I have this here, I have that here. They're both mine. And in both places, I am loved. It's a wonderful story.
Oh, that is a wonderful story. I kind
We
of like
also
the
have
fact.
another one that talks about two homes as well.
Oh, let's do it.
This one is called Two Homes Filled with Love. And this is written by Steve Herman. I'm hoping that you all are seeing what I'm sharing. Can you see that?
Absolutely.
Okay, wonderful. Now, this book is about a little boy named Drew, and Drew has a dragon named Diggery-Doo. And the dragon helps him during this story. It says that Drew and his dragon, Diggery-Doo, on this uplifting story, help a friend during the most difficult change in life when his parents live apart and now he's living in two homes. It's an essential book to help discuss and explain to children the hard but important topic in the simple and appropriate way that children could relate and understand. It's a very good tool for parents, and it's also something that teachers can use in the classroom as well to help children cope with parental separation, with a breakup or divorce, and teach them that whether living in one home or two, they are always loved and supported. And that's a very important message for children, particularly young children.
You can't have too much of that. You can't have too many books that say that. There's great books about, kind of, I want to say not fanciful, but, stories like dragons and dinosaurs. And then there's also books that are like, it's just a kid talking about divorce, a little more matter-of-factly.
Absolutely. Absolutely. There are a few like that I have in my hand, and I'm going to look at this one next. That's called I Have Two Homes. And you can see it's written in first person. And
that looks like Sidney Sheldon's almost, doesn't it?
It does. This is written by Marion DeSmet. And what's happening in this story is the little girl is taking the reader through the two homes in which she lives. I have this in this home. I have this in that home. I do this in this home. I do that in that home. And what you're finding is you're doing the same things in the different homes. But the bottom line is that wherever that child is, the child is loved. When there are activities that she does, maybe a sporting activity, both of my parents are there. They're still supporting me at my recitals or at my soccer games. They're there for me, but I live in two different places. A lot of people have one of everything. I have two of everything. And as you read this, you realize, you know what, it's going to be okay. Because the bottom line is this: I am loved. Wherever I'm living, the love that my parents have for me remains. If I'm at daddy's house, mommy's still loving me. If I'm at mommy's house, daddy's still loving me.
I just think again, just the different kind of points of view. Each of these are the same, a lot of the same things, but from all kinds of different points of view.
Absolutely.
And some may resonate more with a kid than another.
Yes.
And like you just talked about, it's, it's not, it's a beginning. It's not an end.
That's right.
And in fact, I think you have a book like Divorce is Not the End of the World.
Divorce is not the end of the world. And this particular book that you're referencing is actually written by children or older children who experienced divorce. They actually had parents. This is by Zoe and Evan Stern. And it was written as a guide for children. They went through their parents having a divorce. And so they wrote a book for children that are their age or other children who are going through divorce as well. Now, I think this would resonate well with students who are probably high school age, or perhaps a little, maybe middle school age. Yeah. I think it's an excellent resource for them. It's something that they can read independently, and they're recognizing that the authors of this book have gone through what they are currently experiencing or what they will experience. So I think this will be essential for children who are a bit older, and I think parents would appreciate this book quite a bit.
Oh my gosh. And that's important, isn't it? That a parent who's looking to get some books for their kid or their kids recognize sort of the age, adaptability of the kid.
Yes.
And that makes a difference, doesn't it?
It does. It really does. And the next book that I'm showing you, this book is about an 8-year-old, and it's called Mom and Dad Love Me the Same. And the little boy in this story's name is William, and he is 8. And it says that he has a lot of anxiety. His parents tell him they're getting a divorce, and he's worried about how his life is going to change. And so over the course of a year, he experiences many differences and many similarities. He explains his observations to the reader. So this is an 8-year-old walking the reader through what is happening with him. And it's helping children who are his age to understand divorce. And after all, the most important thing is what we've been saying: mommy and daddy still love me. Even though they may feel differently about one another, they do not feel differently about me, and it is not my fault. So this is written with a child's perspective for a younger child. So I really love how these authors have come up with different ways to communicate with children. This is a book where a child would feel safe reading. My friend William, he's the same age as me. He's close in age to me, and he's telling me about things that I'm experiencing now or I'm getting ready to experience. Oftentimes as a teacher, we recognize that while we're trying to teach, children don't get it when we say it. But when we peer them with a classmate, the classmate has a way of allowing them or helping them to understand the concept. And this book is doing that same thing. I didn't share the author. Please excuse me. This is Melissa Torres, who has written this story.
Oh, it looks like a great story.
Yes.
And these books are not, I guess, necessarily meant to be read just one way. I mean, it's like, here's the book, go ahead and go read it. But a lot of these it feels like are with the parents.
Absolutely. And the ideal, I think, would be that a parent and a child are sitting and reading it together. It would be absolutely wonderful if both mommy and daddy were reading it with them. But the hope is that when the children are by themselves, or when they have a moment away from mommy and daddy, that they know that this book is still there and they can go back to the book and spend some time on it. There may be a particular part of the story that stood out to them and they want to read that part again. And so having that book in the house after having read it with a parent allows the child again to maybe express some of those feelings. Remember, we talked about emotions and the timing of it all, and when a child is ready to share. Perhaps that child will feel led to pick up the book and read it by him or herself, or with a sibling, because not every child who's a part of a divorce is an only child. Sometimes there are multiple children in a home, different ages. So maybe they'll share, the siblings will share the book one with the other and talk about things amongst themselves. But having it there gives them the opportunity to go back to this resource and talk, maybe just with themselves, or maybe, as I said, with a sibling, and kind of walk through their feelings a bit more. And then the hope is that they would come back to mommy and daddy and maybe have some questions, or maybe share, well, this is how I'm feeling right now. Well, the book talked about this. It didn't tell me about that. Well, what's going to happen here? That's what we want. We want a line of communication. We want our children not to go within themselves and not talk. We want them to come and ask questions and feel free to do that. And I think that books are a way to kind of bridge that opportunity. I really do.
That makes so much sense. I mean, it's not just kind of go internal and all by yourself, but it opens you up to talking about stuff. And I think you had a book that was even part of a series of books. Kind of, I don't know if they're all in the subject, but I think one of them, isn't it about what happens when parents do separate?
Yeah, exactly. It's called Questions and Feelings About When Parents Separate by Dawn Hewitt. Can you see that? Sometimes we have pets, what happens with my pet? Sometimes I have a pet in both homes. Sometimes my pet travels with me when I travel to mommy's house or to daddy's house. So this book, called When Parents Separate by Dawn Hewitt, it says, part of the Questions and Feelings About series. This picture book was produced in collaboration with mental health and emotional well-being charity Chums to provide a starting point for parents and children to explore the child's feelings about divorce. Focusing primarily on processing new and uncomfortable emotions when parents separate is an excellent resource for dealing with the psychological challenges of divorce. There's so many questions. What am I going to do with my pet? Some children, well, which house does Santa Claus come to? Where do I, so many different questions. How is it possible for me to continue doing both things? Yeah. These are books that are helping parents to answer those questions for children.
I love that. And you talked about how sometimes kids feel at fault.
Absolutely.
I broke it. How do I fix it?
Yes.
Is there books that kind of can get to that?
Well, I think that some of the books that I've already shared with you are actually dealing with that situation where a child is feeling as though my parents are divorcing because of me. It's something that I did wrong. And the children are expressing, my parents are explaining to me, no, it's not what I did. Or another book might be saying it's because parents sometimes fall out of love with one another. Maybe they did initially enjoy talking to one another and doing things together, but then as time passed, they don't enjoy those conversations as much anymore, or they don't smile together as much anymore, or they don't enjoy doing things together anymore. But it's not because of me. It's because of something that's going on with them. And I think that's expressed quite a bit in most of these books, and that's essential for children to understand. It's not your fault. And some of the books are talking about parents getting angry and sometimes taking the anger out on the child and perhaps speaking with a tone that's a little bit harsh. But it is not because of what the child has done. It's because the parent is sad also about what's going on, and it's difficult for the parent. So it's not easy for any person, but it is particularly challenging for the children. So I like the way that the books are expressing the kinds of emotions that can be experienced by children and their families. How is it? Sometimes children get angry at their parents. Some of the books talk about that, and then they have a tone with mommy and daddy because I'm mad at you because you're deciding to leave me and change everything that I know and everything that I want. And then that will lead to a conversation. So there's so many different ways that children can relate to the characters in the story. And that's what I was talking about, books providing that safe place. That's me. You mean somebody else actually feels that way? That actually can happen? I think that's important for children to know that they're not the only ones who are experiencing that. And these authors have done an excellent job of giving children an opportunity to see themselves within the pages of these books.
Wow. These were really, really great recommendations. And
there's one more that I want to share with you.
I'm ready.
And it's by Melanie Walsh, and it's called Living with Mom and Living with Dad, My Two Homes. And it's basically telling you the same thing that the others are, that your parents don't live together anymore. So sometimes you live with mommy, sometimes you live with daddy. These are the things that I do with mommy. These are the things that I do with daddy. These are some things that we still do together. You know, how do we celebrate birthdays? What am I going to do at my birthday time? You know, maybe we'll be at mommy's house and daddy will come. Maybe it will be at daddy's house and mommy will come. Maybe you'll have two different birthdays. You'll have one at mommy's house. You'll have one at daddy's house. There's so many different things that occur, but it allows children to realize that your life will continue. Your parents will still love you and you'll be okay. And in most instances, our children have both of their parents in their lives still. After a divorce, there are times when that is not the case. And that's a conversation that parents will have to have as well. Things are different and they may never be the same again. But having these books to read with your child opens that door for a conversation that helps them through what they're experiencing. If these books do not discuss the particular things that parents are experiencing with their children, with their divorce, they may help with drawing out that conversation and mommies and daddies saying, baby, we'll work through it together. This is new for both of us. This is new for all of us. But the one thing that we want you to know is that you're loved, and the love that we have for you will never change. Where you live might change. Where you go to school might change. How you go about your daily routine might change. But you have me, and you have that community of people that we talked about initially. There's a support system in place that is here to let you know that you haven't done anything wrong, that you are precious, that you are priceless, that you are loved, and you are supported. And I think that's the message that all of these books share.
That's wonderful. Just before we go, though, I do want to kind of hit on, because you are a children's book author.
Yes, I am.
I would imagine that there are even books that aren't about divorce that can be helpful. I mean, there could a range of books that cover different emotions that may come in, or looking to the future. I mean, imagine that you don't necessarily have to just look at divorce books.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The book, we started with a book that was talking about our feelings, and our bodies are showing emotions and sensing different things. The book that I have written is Walking Children Through Grief. In divorce, there is a sense of loss. In death, there is a sense of loss. The title of my book is Best Friends Forever, A Puppy's Tale. And this is a story about a little girl who received a puppy for her 4th birthday. And that puppy became her very best friend. They did everything in the world together. And their family moved some years later, and the puppy had to ride in the luggage compartment of the plane. When that plane landed, the puppy was sick. The puppy was falling down and other things were happening, and they discovered that the puppy had epilepsy. And epilepsy does not have a cure. And so her parents had to help her walk through the process of understanding that eventually this puppy that she loves so well is going to pass away. And that's a conversation that's dealing with loss. Just as divorce can feel like a loss, it's a loss of my normal for children. And so this book, like you're sharing, like other books, can hit on some topics that relate in some way to what a child may be experiencing for divorce. And I hope that my resource of care will be helpful for children who are going through grief and loss of a pet.
No question. I mean, no question. And we are out of time, but I really want you to take some time to also maybe tell how people can get a hold of you if they have questions about this or just about books or want to talk about your books.
Absolutely. You may contact me through my website, which is portiayclare.com. You can find that information about me there, and you can order an autographed copy of my book from my website as well.
I love it. I mean, I could just, having gone through a couple of dogs, I look back and go, God, we really could have used that book. Absolutely.
Yes,
Absolutely.
I think adults can relate to it as well. And the other thing I wanted to share before we go, though these books might be written for younger children, you know what I found, even as an adult or even as a teenager, children's books actually help grown-ups as well.
Yeah.
They're simply written and they're easy to understand. So they're not just for children. They're going to help mommies and daddies as well.
Yep. There are about 3 books I read to my kids, a lot. And I still refer to them
Absolutely.
when I'm talking with adults about situations because they were great books. I mean,
absolutely.
Well, in Sign of the Seahorse, this.
Absolutely.
So
absolutely.
I agree.
That's the beauty of books.
That's the beauty of books. And you, like you said, you never can get too much. I have to admit, right. I am going through my 8th, I think, reading of Lord of the Rings now. Getting ready for the new series.
I understand.
Oh my gosh. Well, thank you. Thank you so much for bringing your knowledge and all of that great experience to talk about this. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I have thoroughly enjoyed it, and my hope is that parents will be helped by what we've shared today.
Oh, I know they will. And so everyone, thank you as well for showing up today. If anyone has further questions again on today's topic, you can post it here. We can get you connected with Portia. And until next time, stay safe, stay happy, and be well.
Bye-bye.